The room smelled like expensive perfume and quiet judgment. Charlotte walked in holding her portfolio like it was armor. She had taken 3 buses to get there. Her edges were laid, her blazer pressed, her heels clicking against the marble floor with a confidence she had practiced in the mirror that morning. She was ready. The casting call was for the face of Hanol Fashion Group's American expansion. A major deal. The kind that changed careers overnight. The kind that put names on billboards and faces on magazine covers from New York to Los Angeles. Charlotte had earned her spot there. Years of modeling, commercial work, one campaign that went semi-viral, and a portfolio that her agent called stunning but hard to place. She never asked what that meant. She already knew. She was a dark-skinned black woman in a room full of women who looked nothing like her. The waiting area was filled with tall, light-skinned girls with long, straight hair and sharp features. A few of them looked at Charlotte when she walked in. One of them leaned toward her friend and whispered something. Then they both laughed. Charlotte sat down. She did not flinch. She had been in this room before, not this exact room, but this exact feeling. She opened her portfolio and reviewed her shots like she had nowhere else to be. Charlotte flips through her portfolio, jaw tight, eyes sharp. She is not nervous. She is focused. The receptionist called names one by one. Each girl who came out of the casting room wore either a grin or a disappointed look. The panel inside was reportedly brutal. 3 people. A creative director, a stylist, and someone from the Korean headquarters who had flown in specifically for this casting. Charlotte did not know who that someone was. When her name was called, she stood up slowly, smoothed her blazer, and walked through that door like she owned every inch of the floor beneath her feet. Charlotte enters the casting room. 3 people sit behind a long table. Bright lights. Cold air. A camera already rolling. The creative director was a thin woman named Patricia who looked at Charlotte over the rim of her glasses and immediately wrote something down. Not in a good way. Charlotte could read rooms. She had been reading them her whole life. The stylist barely looked up. But the 3rd person at the table looked at Charlotte and did not look away. Donghyun. He was younger than she expected. Sharp jaw, dark eyes, a black turtleneck. He sat with a stillness that felt deliberate, like every movement he made was calculated and intentional. He had the kind of presence that made a room feel smaller just by being in it. Charlotte looked at him for exactly 1 second and then looked at Patricia. Charlotte Ives. Patricia said, her voice flat. Yes. You're 28? Yes. Patricia made another note. We were expecting someone a bit more versatile. Charlotte kept her face perfectly still. I am versatile. Patricia gave a small smile that was not really a smile. Your look is very specific, Charlotte. We're going for something more universal. Something that translates globally. Charlotte's jaw tightens. She breathed slowly through her nose. Walk for us, the stylist said, waving a hand like he was bored. Charlotte walked. She did not just walk. She moved like the room belonged to her, like the camera was her oldest friend, like every step was a sentence in a language only she could speak. She turned at the end of the room and came back slowly, holding eye contact with the panel. Patricia was already shaking her head slightly. The stylist scribbled on his notepad. But Donghyun had not moved. He was watching Charlotte the way people watch something rare. Not with hunger. With recognition. Thank you, Patricia said, before Charlotte had even returned fully to her starting position. We'll be in touch. That was code for we will not call you. Charlotte picked up her portfolio. She nodded once, professionally, and turned to walk out. Wait. The voice was low. Accented but clear. She turned. Donghyun was leaning forward now, both forearms on the table. His eyes had not left her. Show me your portfolio, he said. Patricia shifted in her seat. Donghyun SSI, we have 12 more. Show me, he said again, quieter this time, but no less firm. Tense silence. Patricia and the stylist exchange glances. Charlotte walks back to the table and places her portfolio down in front of Donghyun. He turned the pages slowly. He did not rush. He did not perform interest. He was genuinely looking. Charlotte stood with her hands clasped in front of her, watching him the way she watched everything carefully, without revealing too much. He stopped on one image. A black and white shot of Charlotte looking off camera, the light catching the side of her face like something from a painting. He tapped the photo once with one finger. "This is the face," he said. Patricia's voice went tight. "Donghyun SSI, with all due respect, the brand direction we discussed has changed." He closed the portfolio and looked up at Charlotte. "Can you be available Thursday? I want to do a full test shoot." Charlotte did not smile. She wanted to, deep in her chest, but she did not. "Yes," she said. She walked out of that room the same way she walked in. Steady. Controlled. But the moment she stepped into the hallway and the door clicked shut behind her, she pressed her back against the wall and let out a breath so sharp it almost sounded like a laugh. Charlotte alone in the hallway. She closes her eyes for 1 second. A small, private smile crosses her face. Then it disappears. Back to business. Back in the casting room, the voices were not quiet enough. "She's not what Hanol has ever used," Patricia was saying. "Then Hanol has been wrong," Donghyun replied. Simple. Final. Thursday came. The test shoot was at a studio in Midtown Manhattan. Charlotte arrived 40 minutes early. She had done her own prep, brought her own reference images, and had a conversation with herself in the mirror that morning that nobody else needed to hear. The studio was massive. Racks of clothing lined the walls. A full hair and makeup team moved around like a small army. And in the center of it all, directing the setup with quiet authority, was Donghyun. He saw Charlotte when she walked in. He crossed the room to meet her. Donghyun walks toward Charlotte. The crew notices. The room shifts slightly. "You came early," he said. "I'm always early," she replied. He almost smiled. It was not a full smile. Just a small shift at the corner of his mouth that disappeared before it could be called anything. "Good," he said. "I want to talk about the concept before we begin." They sat at a table off to the side of the studio while the crew continued setting up. Donghyun pulled out a leather-bound notebook and laid it open between them. Inside were sketches, color palettes, written notes in both Korean and English. "The campaign is called Noir," he said. "It is about power. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind. The kind that does not need to announce itself." Charlotte looked at the sketches. "You drew these?" "Yes." She looked at him. "You're the CEO." "CEOs are still people," he said. A beat. Their eyes meet. Charlotte looks back at the notebook. "I understand this," she said quietly, about the sketches. "I understand this concept." "I know," he said. "That's why I chose you." The shoot lasted 9 hours. Charlotte was extraordinary. Not just beautiful, although she was that, but present in a way that made the camera almost confused about what to do with her. Every frame held something. Every angle told a story. The crew, who had been quiet and professional all morning, started gathering behind the monitor during the final hour just to watch. Donghyun stood behind the photographer and watched through his own lens. He barely spoke. He did not need to. Charlotte already knew. Final shot of the day. Charlotte stands in a black gown, one shoulder bare, looking directly into the camera. Completely still. Completely certain. "Cut," the photographer said. Silence. Then someone started clapping. The clapping spread. The entire crew. Charlotte stood in that black gown and looked at no one in particular. But Donghyun was looking at her, and she could feel it, the weight of it, specific and different from the way anyone else in that room looked at her. She looked back at him. He did not clap. He just gave her one slow nod. It said more than the clapping did. 3 days after the shoot, Charlotte's agent called her. "I need you to sit down before I tell you this," her agent Renee said. Charlotte was already sitting. "Just say it. Donghyun Kwon is not just the CEO of Hanol. He's also..." "Charlotte, he's engaged. It was announced in the Korean press 2 weeks ago. His family arranged it. The woman is the daughter of a rival fashion house. It's basically a business merger disguised as a marriage." Charlotte's face goes very still. She stares at the wall. "Why are you telling me this?" Charlotte said. "Because I've seen the way people look at someone when they're interested, and honey, the way that man looked at you during the shoot photos the photographer shared with me." Renee paused. "I'm telling you because you need to know what you're walking into before you walk in any further." Charlotte said nothing for a long moment. "He chose me for a campaign, Renee. That's it." "Okay," Renee said carefully. "Okay. But Charlotte, I have to go, Charlotte said. She hung up and sat very still in her apartment. Close up on Charlotte's hands in her lap. Perfectly still. Something working behind her eyes. She told herself it did not matter. She told herself this was business. She told herself she did not feel anything when Donghyun looked at her that was anything other than professional respect. She was very good at telling herself things. But she was also very bad at lying. The Noir campaign launch was scheduled for 6 weeks out. During those 6 weeks, Charlotte was in and out of Hanul's New York offices more times than she could count. Fittings, concept meetings, press preparation, strategy sessions. And Donghyun was at most of them. It was never inappropriate. He was never anything other than professional. But there was a language underneath the professional one that neither of them was speaking out loud, and it filled every room they shared like something heavy and warm and dangerous. A meeting room. Charlotte and Donghyun sit across from each other at a large table with 4 other people present. He slides a document across to her. Their fingers do not touch. But they both go still for a half second. One evening, everyone else had left the office and Charlotte was gathering her things when she realized Donghyun was still sitting at the conference table, his jacket off, his tie loosened, staring at nothing. She stopped. "You okay?" she asked. He looked at her like the question surprised him. "People don't usually ask me that," he said. "People probably assume you don't need to be asked." He was quiet for a moment. "My father called today. About the arrangements." He said the last word like it was in a language he did not enjoy speaking. Charlotte set her bag down slowly. She did not move closer. And I am expected to return to Seoul next month for the formal announcement. With her. He paused. With my fiancé. The word sits in the room between them. Heavy. Both of them feel it. "I don't know why I'm telling you this," he said. "Because it's 9 o'clock, everyone's gone, and you're still sitting alone in a conference room," Charlotte said. "That's usually what that looks like." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was small and quiet, but it was real, and Charlotte felt it somewhere in the center of her chest like a crack forming in something she needed to keep whole. "I should go," she said. "Yes," he agreed. But neither of them moved for another 5 seconds. Then Charlotte picked up her bag and walked out. She hits the elevator button. The doors open. She steps in. As the doors close, she looks straight ahead. Jaw set. Breathing controlled. Something in her eyes that she is fighting hard to keep from becoming anything more. The Noir campaign dropped on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, Charlotte Ives was everywhere. The images were stunning. Bold. Unapologetic. The campaign had been placed in Times Square, in the windows of flagship stores across 5 American cities, in digital ads that ran across every major platform. Charlotte's face, shot in deep blacks and rich golds, stared out from the world like she had always been there and the world had only just caught up. The internet exploded. Montage of social media reactions scrolling. Who is SG? Hanul just changed the game. Finally a campaign that looks like art. Charlotte Ives is the most stunning woman I have ever seen in a campaign. Within 48 hours, Charlotte had 3 million new followers. Her inbox was a flood. Interview requests, brand deals, invitations to events she had never been invited to before. Renee called her 7 times in one morning. "Charlotte, this is it. This is the moment. Do you understand what is happening right now?" Charlotte was standing at her apartment window, looking at the city, and trying to feel something uncomplicated about all of it. But she could not. Because underneath the noise of the campaign's success, something else was happening. Donghyun had not called. He had not texted. He had not sent a message through anyone. After months of being in the same rooms, sitting across from each other in meeting after meeting, building something wordless and undeniable between them, the campaign had launched and he had gone completely silent. Charlotte's phone sits on the counter. She stares at it. She looks away. She looks back. She picks it up and puts it in her bag. She told herself she was not waiting. She was absolutely waiting. On the 4th day after the launch, she got a message. Not from Donghyun. From his assistant, asking her to come to the Hanul offices for a meeting regarding the campaign's next phase. She went. The office felt different when she arrived. Busier. There were more people moving through the halls. And when she was led into the main conference room, she understood why. The room was full. Senior staff, department heads, people she had never seen before who had clearly flown in. And at the head of the table, in his chair, in his black suit, was Dong Hyun. But standing beside him, one hand resting lightly on the back of his chair, was a woman. She was Korean, elegant in the sharpest possible way. Her hair was perfect, her posture immaculate, her eyes surveying the room with the practiced ease of someone who had grown up in power. She looked at Charlotte when Charlotte entered, and the look was the specific kind of calm that very confident women use as a weapon. This was Seo-yeon Lim, the fiancé. Charlotte walks to her seat at the table. She sits. She does not look at Dong Hyun. Dong Hyun does not look at her. The entire room is watching everything. The meeting was about the international expansion of the Noir campaign. The success in America had accelerated Hanul's timeline. They were now pushing into Europe. They wanted Charlotte for 3 more phases. Seo-yeon sat beside Dong Hyun the entire time and said very little. But she watched everything. And at one point, while a junior creative was talking about Charlotte's impact on the brand's visibility, Seo-yeon leaned toward Dong Hyun and said something very quietly in Korean. Dong Hyun's expression did not change. After the meeting ended and people began filtering out, Charlotte was gathering her things when she heard a voice beside her. "You're Charlotte." She turned. Seo-yeon was standing there. Up close, she was even more polished. She extended a hand. "I'm Seo-yeon. I've heard about you." Charlotte shook her hand. Firm. "Good things, I hope." "Interesting things," Seo-yeon said, with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "You're remarkable in the campaign. I can see why Dong Hyun was so determined to use you." The way she said Dong Hyun was a very small, very precise act of ownership. Charlotte smiled back. Just as precise. Hanul knew what they needed. "I'm glad I could deliver it." Seo-yeon tilted her head slightly. "Yes, Hanul always gets what it needs." A beat. "It was lovely to meet you, Charlotte." She walked away. Charlotte watches her go. Then she turns and finds Dong Hyun standing a few feet away, looking at her. It is the first time they have looked at each other directly since she walked in. The look lasts 2 seconds. Maybe 3. Then Dong Hyun turns and follows Seo-yeon out of the room. Charlotte stood alone in the conference room. She felt something sharp and cold and unwelcome move through her chest. She breathed through it. Then she picked up her bag and walked out. 2 weeks passed. Charlotte threw herself into work. 3 interview features. A magazine spread. A meeting with a major luxury brand that wanted her for their own campaign because of the Hanul success. Her career was accelerating in ways she had worked her entire life for. She should have been happy. She was trying very hard to be happy. On a Thursday evening, she was walking out of a studio in Soho when she almost walked directly into Dong Hyun. He was alone. No assistant. No driver visible. He was standing outside the building like he had been there for a while, hands in his coat pockets, looking up at the sky. Charlotte stops dead. Dong Hyun looks at her. They stared at each other on the sidewalk while the city moved around them, loud and indifferent. "You knew I'd be here," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," he said. "Why?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because I needed to see you. And I did not know how to make that appropriate." Charlotte felt something sharp move through her. She kept her voice steady. "Dong Hyun, you have a fiancé." "I know." "Then you also know that whatever this is," she gestured between them, "is not something we can stand on a sidewalk and just let happen." He looked at her the way he looked at that photograph in the casting room. Like recognition. Like something he had found that he was not supposed to find. "I know that too," he said quietly. "Then why are you here?" He exhaled. "Because I have spent 12 years doing exactly what was expected of me. By my family. By the company. By everyone. And I have never once stood outside a building at 7 in the evening trying to find a reason to not do what is expected." He paused. "Until now." Charlotte stares at him. The city is loud. They are very still. She felt the words move through her like something warm and terrifying. She stepped closer to him. Not close enough to be held. Close enough to be honest. "I need you to hear me," she said, her voice low and direct. "I have been underestimated my entire life. Laughed at. Overlooked. I have clawed and worked and built something for myself from nothing, and I am not going to let it become a footnote in someone else's complicated personal life. Do you understand me?" He looked at her without flinching. I understand you. I'm not a side story, Donghyun. No, he said. You are the most important story I have ever encountered. That is what makes this. He stopped. He shook his head slightly. That is what makes this very difficult. Silence. The weight of everything unsaid pressing down on both of them. Charlotte looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped back. Figure out your life, she said. Not unkind. Not cruel. Just true. And then, if there's something real on the other side of that, come find me. She walked away. She does not look back. Donghyun watches her go. He stands on that sidewalk for a long time after she disappears. 3 days later, the Korean entertainment press published a story. The headline, roughly translated, read, Kwon Donghyun calls off engagement to Lim Seo-yeon. Hanul CEO cites personal differences. Renee sent Charlotte the link at 6 in the morning with about 14 exclamation points and 0 actual words. Charlotte read the article twice. She set her phone down. She made coffee. She stood at her window and looked at the city and did not allow herself to feel anything about it yet. Because she had been here before, in different forms, where something that looked like a breakthrough turned out to be a different kind of pain dressed up in good news. She was not going to let herself run toward anything until she was certain of what she was running toward. Charlotte at her window. Coffee in both hands. Thinking. A week after the article, Donghyun called. Not texted. Called. Charlotte let it ring once. Then she answered. Hi, she said. I need to tell you something, he said. His voice was quieter than usual. Less CEO. More human. Okay. The engagement was never what my father said it was. Seo-yeon and I have known each other since we were children. We were told, as adults, that it made business sense. Neither of us ever wanted it. She has been in love with someone else for 4 years. Someone her family does not approve of. He paused. She is relieved. She told me so herself. We ended it together. Charlotte said nothing. I am telling you because I want you to understand that what I walked away from was not a love. It was an arrangement that 2 families created to avoid having difficult conversations. Another pause. I have been having the difficult conversations now. With your family? Charlotte asked. Yes. It has not been pleasant. She could hear the understatement in his voice. She thought about what it cost a man like him, from a family like his, in a world like his, to make that kind of choice. She did not minimize it. She did not romanticize it either. Donghyun, she said carefully. I'm a dark-skinned black woman from Charlotte, North Carolina. Your family was already going to have opinions about me the moment they found out you chose me for the campaign. Yes, he said plainly. They did. And I told them that I am 40 years old and I have run their company successfully for 12 years, and if they trust my judgment in that room, they can extend me the dignity of trusting my judgment in this one. Charlotte's eyes close briefly. She presses her lips together. That must have been a fun conversation, she said, keeping her voice dry. He made a sound that was almost a laugh. She felt the corner of her mouth pull. She stopped it. I'm not asking you for anything right now, he said. I'm just asking you to know that when I stood on that sidewalk, I was not a man looking for distraction. I am a man who saw something real and chose not to lie to himself about it. Charlotte breathed. I hear you, she said. That's enough, he said. For now. 6 months later, the Noir campaign's final phase launched globally. Charlotte was in Paris. Then Milan. Then Tokyo. Then Seoul. She had known going in that it would be complicated. She and Donghyun had spent those 6 months building something slow and deliberate and real, carefully, like 2 people who understood that some things break if you rush them. Phone calls that lasted 2 hours. Visits to New York that were always professional first and then private. A dinner in Brooklyn where they sat in the back corner of a small restaurant and talked until the staff had to politely ask them to leave. It was not simple. It was never going to be simple. But it was real. The realest thing Charlotte had felt in years. Seoul was the last stop of the campaign tour. And Donghyun had asked her, quietly, privately, if she would stay for a few extra days. She said yes. Charlotte lands in Seoul. The city is enormous and bright and completely unfamiliar. She stands outside the airport with her luggage and looks up at the skyline. Donghyun met her himself. No driver. No assistant. Just him, standing at the arrival's exit in a coat and dark jeans, looking somehow slightly softer than he did in the offices, like a version of himself that had permission to exist. She walked up to him. "You look different here," she said. "This is where I grew up," he said. "People usually look different where they grew up." "Is that your way of saying you're more relaxed?" "It is my way of saying I am more myself," he said. A pause. "I hope that is not alarming." "I'll let you know," she said. He takes her bag. She does not argue. They walk together through the city, side by side, not touching, but close. The campaign event in Seoul was the biggest of the entire tour. The venue was extraordinary. The press was overwhelming. And when Charlotte walked the event in the final noir look, a deep, rich velvet gown that moved like it was made of shadow, the room went completely silent for 2 full seconds before the cameras started. She was extraordinary. And Dong-hyun, standing at the side of the room in his black suit, watching her, wore an expression that he did not bother hiding anymore. His mother was there. Kwon Jung-suk, matriarch of the Kwon family. 71 years old, elegant, with eyes that saw everything and gave away nothing. She had heard about Charlotte. She had formed opinions about Charlotte. She had expressed those opinions to her son in detailed and lengthy terms. And she watched Charlotte cross that room with an expression that no one around her could quite read. After the event, while the guests were mingling, Dong-hyun appeared at Charlotte's side. "My mother would like to meet you," he said. Charlotte looked at him. "Tonight?" She believes in efficiency. Charlotte looked across the room to where Kwon Jung-suk stood, watching them both. Charlotte squares her shoulders. Something fierce and steady settles in her expression. "Lead the way," Charlotte said. They crossed the room together. Dong-hyun made the introduction in Korean and then in English. His mother listened to both with the same unreadable expression. Then Kwon Jung-suk looked at Charlotte directly and said, in precise, careful English, "My son has spoken about you a great deal." "I hope some of it was interesting," Charlotte replied. Jung-suk's expression shifted, almost imperceptibly. But Charlotte caught it. "He says you are extraordinary in front of the camera," Jung-suk said. "I am," Charlotte said simply. Not arrogance, just truth. Another small shift in Jung-suk's expression. "He also says you told him to fix his life before coming to find you," Jung-suk said. "That you would not be anyone's side story." Charlotte did not flinch. "That's correct." Jung-suk looked at her for a long, quiet moment. Then she said something in Korean to Dong-hyun. He listened. His expression stayed neutral, but something in his eyes changed. He translated for Charlotte. "She says you have a backbone. She says that is not as common as it should be." Jung-suk said one more sentence in Korean. Short. Pointed. Dong-hyun translated it carefully. "She says she does not know yet. But she is willing to observe." Charlotte looked at Jung-suk and gave her one slow, respectful nod. Jung-suk held her gaze for a moment longer. Then she nodded back. It was not approval. It was not warmth. But it was a door left slightly open, and Charlotte Ives had spent her entire life finding ways through doors that people thought were closed. Dong-hyun stands between his mother and Charlotte. He exhales very quietly. It has been the longest night. Later, outside the venue, Dong-hyun and Charlotte stood alone on a rooftop terrace while the city of Seoul glittered below them in every direction. Neither of them spoke for a while. "That went better than I expected," Dong-hyun said. "Your bar is on the floor," Charlotte replied. He looked at her. "I know. I've been lowering it strategically so the real outcomes feel like victories." She laughed. A real one. She had not meant to. He watched her laugh with an expression that was completely unguarded in a way she had almost never seen on him, soft and certain and something close to awe. "Charlotte," he said, when the laugh faded. She looked at him. "I want to ask you something," he said. "And I want you to know that there is no pressure in the asking." None. She waited. "I am restructuring the American division of Hanol. I am moving the creative headquarters to New York. I will be spending significantly more time there." He paused. "I would like to know if you would be open to being not just the face of noir, but a creative partner. A named partner in the campaign direction." Another pause. "And I would like to know if, separate from business entirely, you would have dinner with me. Not a meeting. Not a campaign discussion. Dinner." Silence. Seoul shines below them. The air is cool. Charlotte looks at him. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, the creative partner conversation is going to require a very serious contract negotiation. Agreed, he said. My lawyer is expensive. So is mine, he said. And dinner, she said slowly, is one condition. He looked at her carefully. What condition? Charlotte met his eyes. You walk into that restaurant the same way I walk into every room I've ever been underestimated in. Like you belong there. Like you are not apologizing for being there. Like nothing in the world could make you look away from what you know is right. Dong-hyun looked at her for a long, full moment. I already do that, he said quietly. Every time I walk into a room with you. The city lights up behind them. Charlotte looks at him. Something in her face, that careful, controlled, hard-won guard, softens. Just slightly. Just enough. She looked away first. Out at the city. Thursday, she said. For dinner. Thursday, he agreed. And then his phone buzzed. He looked down at it. His expression changed in a way Charlotte had never seen before. Something between shock and something harder to name. Charlotte looked at him. What is it? He turned the phone toward her. A message. From a name she did not recognize. In Korean, she could not read. But the photograph attached to the message, she could see that. It was a photograph taken from a distance, slightly blurry, of Charlotte and Dong-hyun standing on this terrace, right now, talking. Beneath the photo were words she could not read. But Dong-hyun's face told her everything she needed to know about what those words said. Dong-hyun, she said carefully. Who sent that? He looked up from the phone and looked at her with an expression she had never seen on him. It was not fear. It was the specific look of someone who has just understood that something they cared about is about to be put in direct danger. The Lim family, he said quietly. Charlotte stared at him. Seo-yeon's family? Her father, Dong-hyun said. He has been waiting for the right moment. He paused, his jaw tight. It appears he has decided tonight is that moment. A long beat. The city glitters. The phone glows between them. What does it say? Charlotte asked, her voice steady even though everything in her chest was not. Dong-hyun looked at her directly. It says that if I do not reconsider the broken engagement and recommit to the arrangement by the end of this quarter, he will take everything he knows about Hanul's internal restructuring and use it to destroy the American expansion before it begins. Silence. Charlotte's face goes still. The way it goes still when something hits hard and she refuses to let it show. He's threatening your company, she said. He is threatening everything, Dong-hyun said. The New York expansion. The Noir campaign continuation. The partnerships we have just built. He paused. You. Charlotte looked at him. She understood now. This was not just about a broken engagement. This was about power. Money. Pride. And she, Charlotte Ives, the girl who took 3 buses to a casting call and was almost dismissed before she walked through the door, had somehow become the center point of a battle between 2 of the most powerful families in Korean fashion. Charlotte Ives stands on a rooftop in Seoul with a city of 10 million people below her, and she does not look small. She looks exactly like what she is. A woman who has survived every room that tried to make her disappear. She looked out at the city. Then she looked back at Dong-hyun. How long do you have? She asked. Until end of quarter, he said. 60 days. Then we have 60 days, she said. Charlotte. No. Her voice was quiet, but it was iron. I did not come this far to be run off by a man who is angry that his business arrangement fell apart. I did not come this far at all. She held his gaze. You told your mother you trust your own judgment. I'm telling you to trust it now. He stared at her. Something in his expression, all that careful control, cracks open just slightly. Just enough to see what is underneath. And what is underneath is a man who has been alone in his certainty for a very long time and has just found someone willing to stand in it with him. What if this becomes very ugly, he said. Dong-hyun. She said his name like a period at the end of a sentence. Have you seen what I look like when I walk into a room that does not want me there? A beat. Yes, he said. Then you already know I can handle ugly, she said. His jaw relaxes. His shoulders settle. He looked at her with the full weight of everything he felt and had not yet said, everything that would take time and dinners and difficult conversations and maybe a very expensive contract negotiation. Everything that was real and complicated and worth every single complicated inch. Thursday, he said. Thursday, she said. The city burns bright below them. 2 people on a rooftop. 1 phone with a thread on it. 60 days. And everything, absolutely everything, still to play for. But here is the question that nobody is asking yet. If the Lim family has been watching long enough to photograph them tonight, what else have they been watching? And what else do they already know? Because when Charlotte's past comes up in the next move this family makes, and it will, Dong Hyun is going to learn something about the woman he chose that even Charlotte has never said out loud. And the question is not whether he can handle it. The question is whether Charlotte will let him. If you have made it this far, you already know what kind of story this is. It is not about a woman who needed to be saved. It is about a woman who was always worth choosing, even when the room full of people in expensive clothes laughed and looked the other way. The moral here is simple but not easy. The world will try to tell you that you are too specific, too much, too dark, too bold, too complicated to fit into the spaces it built without you in mind. Charlotte Ives did not change her face or her walk or her standard to fit. She made the space fit her. And that is the only way it has ever worked for anyone who mattered.